Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk about a pair of small bookshelf speakers, two-way speakers with a big old passive radiator on the back for quality deep bass down to 33 hertz. These are speakers I've been wanting to review for a couple of years now. It was their older version that first got my attention. I remember looking at videos on YouTube about these earlier versions of the Buchardt S400s. I now have the Mark IIs, and I loved the style. I loved the uniqueness. I loved the way the tweeter was on the bottom and the woofer was on the top. I love the fact that it had that big oval-shaped passive radiator because I knew that they would deliver really good bass. Now, my only concern with them when I saw them a year and a half, 2 years ago was, could they really sound as good as something, say, like a Dynaudio Heritage Special? The Dynaudios are one of my favorite, if not my favorite, bookshelf speakers of all time, but they come in at around $7,000. The versions I have here are the Mark II, the newest versions of the S400, and I have them in the beautiful rosewood veneer. Now, these are 88 decibel efficient speakers. They are 4 ohm. But I have to tell you, I've been testing them with my Enlium Amp 23R, which puts out 25 watts per channel, Class AB, and I also tested them with the PassLabs XA60.8 monoblocks. Now, I do have my full written review up at my website. I'll put a link in the description below. The written reviews tend to have a little more details, a little more thoughts than these videos. But I've had these speakers in-house for about, I'd say, maybe over 3 weeks now. I can't recall, the way time flies. It just goes by so fast. And I got to tell you, I'll tell you right up front, if I did not have my $20,000 reference Fleetwood DeVille SQs, if I was not blessed to be able to own those, I would probably own these Buchardt S400 Mark IIs. I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about how they sound in comparison to the $7,000 Dynaudios and even the $500 Emotiva B2 Plus I recently reviewed. So these speakers came into my space. I set them on my Dynaudio Stand 6. Now, Buchardt Audio does sell specific stands for these. I do not have those here, but the Stand 6 works really well in my listening space. These speakers are unique. You'll see the tweeters at the bottom, but Buchardt Audio says you can actually flip them up the other way. You can play them upside down or right side up. Now, the passive radiator in the back does allow for really deep bass, and I'm telling you, these things are tiny in size. Not tiny, but they're a bookshelf speaker, right? So they're a normal bookshelf speaker, which is small. And usually the weakness of bookshelf speakers is the bass output. The Dynaudio Heritage Specials have tremendous bass output, and so do the Buchardt Audios. The deep bass with these speakers, I believe they're rated to 33 hertz, literally vibrated my couch when I turned up the volume a little bit. And they are beautiful to look at. And the star of the show of these speakers is the way they portray the human voice. The Buchardt S400 Mark IIs have a silky, realistic way they represent and put forth and bring out the human voice. You can hear every crackle, but it's not in a harsh kind of way. It's very silky and smooth. Now, Buchardt says they improved the treble performance in the Mark IIs. I never heard the original versions, but I have to say, the way the mid-range is done, the way the human voice is represented with these is not only beautiful, it's intimate, it's real, and while not big and in your face and fat, it just has that beautiful, almost like it has a glow to it, right? Now, the mid-bass is not plump, so you're not going to get a big fat mid-bass here, but you do get a really deep controlled, tight bottom end, a big bass. And in fact, the big bass actually competes with my $20,000 Fleetwood DeVilles. Now, the DeVilles are much bigger speakers. They have a much bigger scale. They have a much bigger voice. They are a very special speaker. But those are if you have the funds. If you don't have those kind of funds, Can you get something that's equally as beautiful? Of course you can. And these Buchards are only around $2,000. I mean, I couldn't believe the price. And I originally emailed them and said, how could you sell these at such a price when so many speakers today are sold at outrageous prices? And basically they eliminate the middleman. There's no dealer, so there's no dealer markup, which in some cases can be 40%, sometimes even more. So cutting out that middleman allows them to sell direct and allows them to sell them at a much more reasonable price. I would venture to guess if there was a dealer network involved, these speakers would come in at around $4,500. Would they still be worth it at that? I would say probably so, because I'm enjoying these just as much as I enjoyed the Dynaudio Heritage Specials at $7,000. Now, the Dynaudios have a little more sizzle on top. They're more of a audiophile style treble. They are more detailed and I don't want to say analytical because they're not, but they just have a more sharper treble. A little more detail is prevalent. The Dynaudios have a little bit more of a plumper mid, and the bass is honestly about equal between the two. The Dynaudio Heritage Special is a technically better speaker. It's made of real wood. It looks beautiful, but again, $7,000. The Buchardt S400 MKII uses a beautiful veneer. You can get them in walnut, rosewood. They even have a limited edition of 50 pairs, limited to 50 pairs in a zebra wood. They are actually rather stunning. But for $2,000, you can get the S400 MKIIs, and they will offer up a really nice soundstage. And there's one part of this that blew me away. Now, usually when we get speakers that are hi-fi, one of the things we like is the big, wide sound stage, right? That means the wider the stage, it's almost like you're sitting in your space and you're looking up at a concert, and there's a concert stage. You hear the pianist to the left, you hear the bass player to the right, you hear the vocalist in the middle. And the wider the stage, the more immersive and expansive the experience. Now, some speakers excel at this big, wide sound stage, but it's harder for a speaker to excel with a front to back sound stage. So for example, you hear the singer front and center, but with speakers that excel at the deep sound stage, you'll hear the drummer behind that singer. It'll be a total three-dimensional experience. The S400 MKIIs excel not only at a wide sound stage, I've heard wider, but it's very wide, but at the depth, right? So you hear the sounds behind the vocalist. You hear the instruments in space where they're supposed to be. Now, as long as you drive them properly, right? And you have a front end that can exploit the quality of this speaker. And just for kicks, I place these speakers in my reference system, and I also place them in a smaller, inexpensive system to see the differences of what they would sound like. In my reference system, these were hooked up to a DCS Lena DAC, which is my favorite DAC that I've heard to date. I haven't heard them all. I haven't heard the Vivaldi or the Rossini, but I love the Lena, and I have the master or the clock for it hooked up as well with some pretty nice Shunyata cables. I have the Enlium Amp 23R, which is phenomenal for speakers as well as headphones. I have the Pass Labs Monoblocks All Class A, Pass Labs preamp, and some really decent cables from Cardis. When I placed these into the reference system, I could not believe it. As a matter of fact, Debbie walked in and she goes, "What are those, $10,000 speakers again?" I said, "No, these are like $2,000. And she said, "What?" And then she kind of gave me an eye, like, "You paid $20,000 for those, and these are $2,000 and sound this good." I'm not saying they beat my DeVilles. They don't. They do not. But could I live with that sound? Absolutely. They were magical. They had that depth. They had that sound stage. They had that silky voice, which rides that line between detail and warmth. And while these are not in any way analytical or over detailed, they're also not overly warm, right? They are almost neutral with a touch of humanity. Now, I always talk about how I like speakers that touch the heart and soul, right? These touched my heart and soul. And I wish I could own them. have to stop buying audio gear, but these would be, without question, my reference for a bookshelf speaker up to about $5,000. These are probably one of the biggest no-brainer deals since I talked about the Wilsonton R8 tube amp, which many of you bought and have expressed great joy from. That you guys love that amp. It's such a tremendous bargain for what it is. These fall into that same category. As a matter of fact, when you hook them up to the R8, they sound beautiful as well, and they have a little bit more juiciness to them from the tubes. Now, I understand how they can sell these for such a price, but I think people need to know that these are out there. These are true hi-fi speakers. No, they're not going to be Magicos. They're not going to be Wilsons. They're not going to be Fleetwoods. But they do outperform, in my opinion, the Dynaudio Special 40. That was another bang for the buck speaker I loved, and they were $3,500, I believe, at launch, or $3,000. I'm not sure what they are today. The Special 40s are beautiful sounding speakers. They look the part. They're beautiful, but the Buchards are more intimate. They're more neutral. They're more enveloping. They suck you into the performance even more. While the Dynaudios have a little more impact, right? These just bring the music to you. No matter what genre you want to listen to, they sound amazing. They're just so sweet and beautiful. Compared to the $500 Emotiva speakers, these are way more refined in the treble. They are way more refined in the mid-range, and they don't have that mid-bass hump. Now, the Emotivas are great for rock and roll. They're great for metal. As a matter of fact, if metal is your main thing, check out those Emotivas. They are really good for that kind of music. If you want a speaker that's going to deliver that massive soundstage, the massive depth, the airiness, these are very airy in that mid. Take a long, hard look at the Buchardt S400 Mark IIs. If you want to check them out, I believe Buchardt offers a in-home trial, so you can try them out. If you don't like them, you can send them back. That's the only way to go to listen to them in your own space. Now, when I listen to these in the less expensive system, for example, the Emotiva integrated amp and a Blue Sound node and a, say, $500 turntable, they still sounded really, really good. In my reference system, they had a bigger scale. In the smaller system, they had a smaller scale, and they sounded a little more thin, but they were still beautiful. And the good news about that is, if you buy these, you can start them with a modest system, a modest amplification. And then later, you can get a reference amplifier, and these are up to the task. So the Buchardt S400 Mark IIs get my highest recommendation. You can't beat them for the money. There's no way, no how. These are well worthy of the hype. So compared to the Mark I, the Mark II version is redesigned with a highly improved crossover, which comes into play for that mid-range and treble. Also has a new paper cone woofer and an improved cabinet. The huge passive radiator in the back is for deep and controlled bass response. Now, these can be placed directly up against a wall if need be, and upside down if necessary. Buchardt says it pairs great with all types of amplifiers. In my experience, that is the case. These also come with a 10-year warranty. And Buchardt says if you want a perfect match for these, you can check out their integrated amplifier, which they designed to mate exclusively, well, not exclusively, but they designed it with the S400's Mark IIs. So that should be a perfect match. I have not heard that integrated amp. As far as the tweeter, Buchardt says it's the same tweeter as its predecessor, but it sounds way different with the new crossover. We find it to be very well balanced between detailed and relaxed. It says the Mark II tweeter is one part that you will more or less forget about in a good way, and that is absolutely true. And that's all due to the new crossover. They say the mid-range presents human vocals in quite a remarkable way, and I agree 100%. They said they put a lot of attention into this, and it should be pretty apparent that human voices took a very high priority when they were designing them. With the past labs, They were warmer, a little thicker sounding, and had that Class A beautiful sound. The Class A sound will give you more warmth and even more of an immersive experience. I will put a link in the description below right to Buchardt's website where you can check out more details. I'll also put a link in the description below to my written review of these beautiful speakers. I hope you enjoyed this review. It looks like the sun is coming and going here today, but it's a beautiful day. I'll have more soon, including my review of the DCS Lena Master Clock with the generic cables that come with it, as well as some Shunyata Alpha and Omega Clock 75 cables. I can't wait for that one. I'll see you next time. Bye.